Dear students, a humorous horror story is a rarity, and believe Oscar Wilde to give you such a wonderful story. Today we will do a story, The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. We will do it in three parts. First, something about the story, the introduction and the themes and the message, etc., the style of the writer, and then the summary. Let's talk about the author first. Oscar Wilde, I'm sure you must have heard his name a lot, was a phenomenon in 19th century England. He gave importance of style in life and art and attacked Victorian narrow-mindedness. In fact, his first and only novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, became a source of a lot of controversy in the Victorian times. He was very famous personality, very flamboyant, wrote flamboyantly and even dressed very flamboyantly, and he was involved in a scandal in 1895 and was imprisoned. After the imprisonment, he had to go through a lot of labor during that imprisonment, so he left England. Before that, in 1881, he had won the Newgate Prize for his poem Ravenna, one of the most beautiful poems in the English literature. This is a short story. It has themes of cultural clash. It is a story about the Otis family and their cultural clash with the Old English culture. And forgiveness. There is a ghost in the story who is at last forgiven through the importance of love. And then there is, of course, horror. There are lots of horror elements in this story, but they are all funny and humorous. There is also a message to the story. It's not just a humorous horror story. There's a message that life and death both are very significant, but stronger than them is love that we carry in our hearts. Now, let's talk about the style of the writer. Oscar Wilde was a very accomplished writer, and in this story, he has amalgamated many genres like the fairy tales, gothic stories, novels, horror elements, even some American stories. Then there is ample use of wit, humor, satire. He satirizes the characters' weaknesses and gives us strong, important characters. Like Mrs. Otis becomes a comical character because of his descriptions. And the boys, the twin boys, naughty boys, are called Stars and Stripes just because they are spanked a lot. There is use of Old English words which gives an archaic touch to the novel, like the enterprising impresario. All in all, it's a very humorous and convincing read. The atmosphere that the writer builds is very, very horrific. There is an Old English charm to it. There's an Old English farmhouse, the country house where the family migrates. It's a haunted house and they know it from the start, but there are freaky incidents which don't unnerve them, and there are twins' tricks which overturn the situation. The ghost is scared of the family. Instead of the family being scared by the ghost is scared. So there is a reversal of situation. And Oscar Wilde uses humor as his most powerful weapon in this story. In fact, at one point of time in the story, the real ghost is surprised and afraid of the fake ghost. And there are pranks used like the butter slide, where he slides down the stairs because the twin used the butter slide to ensnap him. So let's talk about the summary of the story. It starts with the purchase of Canterville Chase by Mr. Otis. Mr. Otis is an American minister. He purchases it from Lord Canterville. Lord Canterville dutifully informs him about the ghost, that there is a ghost in the house, it is haunted, but Otis does not believe it. He says, had there been a ghost in Europe, America would have already imported it and transplanted it in Hollywood. So they believe in reason, logic, and they are not at all scared. The Otis family has Mr. Otis, Mrs. Otis, a very beautiful woman, Washington, the son, the elder son who has fair hair and is interested in casinos, Virginia, a sweet and quiet girl, and the twins who are very, very naughty. Then they arrive through and travel through the pine woods. The weather is very nice, it is very scenic, there is enchanting beauty, but as soon as they reach the mansion, the sky becomes overcast, the atmosphere becomes spooky, and it starts to rain. They are welcomed by Mrs. Umne, an old housekeeper, who immediately tells them about the house being haunted and welcomes them with tea. And she also shows them the persistent blood stain, which she says has never been removed. It always comes back after the murder of Mrs. Canterville, Lady Canterville, by her husband Lord Simon, who is the ghost. So as soon as Washington sees the ghost, sees the stain, he starts removing it, and he says the American Paragon detergent and Pinkerton stain remover will remove the stain immediately. So they have a logical and practical approach. They are not scared of the ghost. But as they were as the stain was being removed, lightning and thunder strikes. Still they are not afraid, and they assure Mrs. Umney that they are not worried about the ghost. They don't believe in it. But when they wake up in the morning next day, the blood stain is again there. They are very intrigued by it, and they start discussing it, and then they finally accept the presence of the ghost. And Washington on his own thinks about writing to the stain remover company about a complaint. They try to restore normalcy. They go for a drive. They do not entertain any supernatural conversation, so that everybody is at peace, and then they sleep. But again, the ghost appears at night, clanking his chains, and Mr. Otis, instead of being frightened, is irritated, and he comes and tells the ghost to use a lubricator for his chains so that they don't disturb others. The ghost is taken aback at this reaction, and he skippers away, and when he is running away, he is hit by a pillow from the twins. So neither the children nor the parents are at all affected by the ghost. The ghost is very disturbed, and he recounts his achievements. He considers himself an artist in this horror painting, and he is very disturbed why he is not able to disturb this family, whereas he has been able to horrify people into death. And he recounts his tales about how housemaids and duchesses were afraid, so scared, some lost their lives, some never came back, some lost their marriages, and he is very, very disturbed. Then he plots a revenge from the twins and the family, and he plans to give them a very good scare.